Of course I fucking drink and I immediately cough. Hello everybody, I'm back from winter break, from Christmas. I know it's been a while. The thing is I've just been filming videos that I'm unhappy with. Like, I'll spend the week writing the video and I just won't enjoy the content because the message at the end of the day just comes down to read the spell list, and that's not really what I want to give you guys. I'm like, here are spells you can use as a DM to beat the enemies. They've got too many options, so you should probably read the spell list, also counterspell and dispel magic. Like, that was a whole video, and I just fucking blah 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 for like 20 minutes, and I don't want to give you guys that content. That sucks. That's so bad. So I started thinking a bit more about my philosophy when it comes to DMing, and my philosophy about how players work and how builds work, and I realized there's something that I haven't really ever covered with you guys, and that is the actual archetypes of builds and players and classes. Today, I'm going to go over them and teach you what they are and how to deal with them, as well as one myth build / archetype that people think exists but doesn't really exist. And also, tell you a story about the only build I have ever had banned from a table. Or more, the DM asked me to change it because it was too... I'll go into it, okay? I'll tell you. In order to not sound like a broken record, first of all, this is assuming you've already seen my previous videos on level 20 DM bootcamp. This is all about DMing and playing at level 20. So if you have not seen those videos, before you ask any questions, go and watch them. I will go and find and make the fucking playlist so I can just send you guys there. But go watch those videos because they tell you a lot about my philosophy as a DM and how to actually approach level 20, because you're not going to get that from the books. So first of all, let's cover the myth. Chapter 1, the myth of the tank. The tank doesn't exist in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. The tank is a non-existent role in D&D because there's an important part about playing a tank that needs to kind of be exemplified. I'm going to use some MMO terms here, some Warcraft terms, okay? We're going to use some of those today to talk about tanking and what a tank actually does. A tank's job is to soak damage. They are to be the wall that you put in front of the thing that's dealing damage, and they just eat it. They just eat all of that. And it's to protect your squishier friends. However, D&D only has one of those things. It has the ability to soak damage, but it doesn't have a way to protect your allies. You're probably saying, but there's like the protection fighting style, there's all this stuff. The premier tanking class, the barbarian, the class that's actually the best at tanking, has no way to do the second job of the tank, and that is pull aggro, direct damage to itself, to have the enemy shoot it, hit it with an attack. The only class that has any method of doing this is the Path of the Ancients Barbarian. And the Path of the Ancients Barbarian only works on attacks. And as you get to higher level, creatures stop attacking. They just don't attack as much as they used to back in the lower levels. They're using breath weapons, they're blasting you with spells, they're using AoEs. It's a whole situation. But the Path of the Ancients Barbarian is the only true tanking class at low levels, and once you reach high levels, they stop operating. Tanks don't exist in 5th edition. Now, we can go into how to fix that, how to make a tank exist. We can talk for days about how to actually make tanks work in D&D 5th edition, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about how to deal with things. So if you have a tank in your little play group, then how you deal with them is you ignore them, because they don't really exist.
It's fiction. We made it up.
This is part joke, part real. Tanks gets value by you attacking it. So how you avoid giving it value is you don't hit it. You hit the enemy. You hit the other people. And you have ways to do that. Ranged attacks, spells, AoE effects. There are so many ways to hit people who aren't the tank that the tank ceases to function as a role and it no longer actually works. The other way that a tank could get value is by dealing so much damage that you can't ignore it. But most tanks fail to do this. The Barbarian as a class does not deal enough damage. I've seen people rebuttal this before, and look, I know you think it does. I know you want to believe that it deals damage. If you crunch the numbers, even with Great Weapon Master, the most they deal is about 70 damage. Fighters can deal well into the 100s. 50 is simply not enough damage. It is a pitiful amount of damage, even to do resourceless, because guess what? The Warlock is doing that and more without spending a damn thing. It's not good. Stop arguing it's good. It's bad damage, and it just makes the class worse, and you trick people into playing it. It's a bad fucking class. You can multi-class with it. There's some definite uses for multi-classes with the Barbarian. as a pure class, you're not getting as much value. You're not getting hit in the first place because how a good DM is going to deal with you is to ignore you. And that is how you deal with a tank. You deny them the value that they bring to the team, which is that hitting them is basically worthless. And that's the whole thing that they give. Hitting them is worthless because they have so much health and they resist so many damage types that hitting them is literally less value than hitting somebody else on a numerical and percentage basis. There's no reason to hit into a tank, which is why the tank doesn't exist, because it doesn't function, and then how you deal with it is you just ignore it, preventing it from functioning. It's so easy to deal with a tank that it's not really a role at high level play. Maybe at lower level play, I don't know. Actually, I do know it doesn't. I know people are going to rebuttal this anyway. It doesn't really work at low level either way. The Path of the Ancients Barbarian, maybe, like a little bit, or the Ancestors, sorry. Like a little bit, but even then, it just doesn't function as you would want it to. So the tank doesn't exist. That is the myth. That's the fact. You deal with it by ignoring it, hit the other people, and when it's the last thing left, it's going to be dealing so little damage that it doesn't even fucking matter. Now, if you start giving them some magic items and they dip into fighter to get action surge and all sorts of other stuff, then maybe they can start being a bit more of a threat, but then they operate still more like a damage dealer, and we're going to talk about that. In fact, that's the next chapter. Chapter 2! Damage types! Now, we're getting into the 3 actual types of classes in D&D. There's, of course, the 13 classes, the fighters, the rogues, the wizards, the sorcerers, all that bullshit. That is not important. There are 3 types of actual archetypes that people can fit into. Those are damage, control, support. Those are the 3. Usually, a single character can sustain 2 of these archetypes within themselves. They can be a damage control, or a damage support, or a support control. They can do that. However, they can sustain that within themselves as a class. So usually you're gonna have to employ more than one of the following tactics, but damage is by far the thing I think people get most confused on. Despite it not being the most difficult to deal with, it does require a bit more game knowledge and a little bit more upfront understanding. First of all, I know Critical Role has tricked you all into thinking that this is a role-playing game, but no, the voice actors lied. This is a resource management game. Role-playing's illegal. No, I kid, obviously. It is a role-playing game, but it's also a role-playing game with the basis and fundamentals of resource management. It is a resource management game at its core. What are the resources? There's no crafting. Well, there is crafting, but it sucks. The resources are spell slots and action surges, okay? That's it. Those are the resources you got. Those are the resources that you gotta be looking out for. Spell slots, action surges, and maybe some class abilities. The resources are spell slots, action surges, abilities. I'm repeating this shit to get it through your heads. And if it's a resource management game, you as the dungeon master / game designer need to be thinking about how to interact with these resources. A damage dealer is a threat when they start dealing about 200 plus damage in a round. If you're playing with me, that's looking more like 300 to 500, and if I'm feeling fun, it's about 800 to 1000. And this is not me blustering. That is how much damage my characters deal when I'm playing in your games. That is how much damage you should be expecting. But I cannot do this without resources. Those resources being spell slots, action surges, and abilities. So how do you deal with damage dealers? Damage dealers solve a problem. The problem is hit points. Damage dealers delete hit points and reduce them to 0. You need ways to coax damage dealers into spending their resources frivolously or more than they should be. I play frequently with DannyPhantom.exe, one of my best friends of all time. One of the things that we do is I play in his game, he plays in my game, he's the damage dealer in my game, I'm the damage dealer in his game. How we deal with each other is very simple. We tax each other's resources, those resources being spell slots. I will usually throw in my games about 2 to 3 fights per day if I can handle it. And I'll try to eat out those fucking spell slots, those smites that he has, before he gets the chance to use them on the boss I actually care about. You try and draw out those resources, tax them. Oh, to get in here, you need to use a 4th level dimension door. Oh, that's one spell slot. That is 5d8 damage off the table for later. Oh, to get into there, you need to cast this specific spell at a certain level. That is another 5d8 damage off the table for later. That is how you need to be thinking about this. If you are having trouble visualizing this, have your player explain their build to you. Forgo your hubris and your pride and just go, I don't fucking know what you're doing. Tell me how this works. Don't do it as like a,
oh, I need to deal with them. I need to beat them. But
do it out of genuine respect. Have a conversation with them. Go like, hey, I'm having trouble with your build. I need help. I want to figure out what you're doing. I want to figure out how this works. Could you please help me? And then you talk with them and figure it the fuck out. And if they're a good person, they'll happily explain it to you. If they're a shitty person and go like, no, I'm not going to tell you,
then they're a little dickwad and you shouldn't be playing with them because they're a fucking asshole anyway.
But typically the answer is put more fights in your games as like a general thing. And put more puzzles in your games that require them to use their abilities. I'm going to tell you this right now. No rogue is a damage dealer. No barbarian is a damage dealer. No monk is a damage dealer. If they are a damage dealer, it's because you gave them magic items. And if that's the case, the answer is still the same. Eat their abilities with other fights, with less important fights, but still requiring massive amount of hit points and still requiring them to solve the problem. That's what you do with damage dealers. You make them waste their abilities on other stuff, on other enemies, on still important and threatening things, but make them waste it. Remember, this is at level 20. Anything is on the table. The level 20 characters can have beef with gods on the regular. You can fight multiple gods in a day at level 20. Okay? Side note, if you are one of those people who jump into my comment sections all the time and go, I would just throw 30 Tarrasques at him. I would just kill him with rocks. I would just do this. I would just... You're a fucking idiot. You do not know how to DM, and you're a fucking egotistical dickhead. Being a dungeon master is not killing your party members on a whim because you're God. It's being an intelligent and smart person to help engage and facilitate the fun of the table. If you're sitting there watching somebody have a great time, and you're like,
I need to punish them because their build is working and I don't know what to fucking do.
You're an idiot. You're a dickwad or you don't know how the fucking game works. Because frankly, you should be taking that as a learning opportunity and go, how do I deal with this? You can always kill the party at any time. That's not the point of D&D. The point is to engage with fun mechanics and facilitate it for your friends. That's what the point is, okay? So if you're going to go into my comment section and say, I would just kill them, you're a moron and you should shut your mouth. And I don't want to see it. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm tired of seeing this dumb bullshit in comment section. It's boring. It's stupid. It's not even funny. It's tired. It's like the dog at the kennel that's been there for 20 years. It's sad, tired, and someone should get rid of it at this point. Where did that come from? Holy fuck. So, that's how you deal with damage dealers. Give them more fights, give them more things to spend the resources on. And if they're doing it without resources, probably fucked up. They might be cheating. Because there's always an action surge that you can tax. There's always something that you can tax. There's always something, okay? And if there isn't something, maybe you need to read their abilities and figure out how they work. Sidebar as well. As far as damage dealers go, there's only really a few avenues you can go that really affect the game too much. That is paladins that are multi-classed with a big spellcaster and have fighter in them for action surge. They can slam out smites really quickly. These will spend through their spell slots incredibly quickly. They are particularly susceptible to this. All paladins are, but Nova paladins are the ones that actually deal damage. If they're some kind of spellcaster, they're probably abusing Spirit Shroud in some way to deal absurd amounts of damage at high level. Remember, Spirit Shroud is concentration. Break their concentration, make them waste the spell, make them recast it. Dispel magic will cancel the spell as well. Counterspell. Like, there's so many ways to make them waste their resources. That's how you deal with damage dealers. And if they aren't doing any of that, they're probably got magic items, and the way how you deal with that is to make sure that they're wasting their resources in other ways. Anyways, that's how you deal with damage dealers. Chapter 2, control builds. Okay, Chapter 3, control builds. Control builds are by far the second most tricksy. Dealing with damage dealers is straightforward. Just put more shit in front of them. Dealing with control builds is difficult because you have to both make them feel useful at the same time as without completely just saying they're immune. Control builds usually rely on saving throw spells in order to inflict conditions upon the opponents. As you reach higher and higher levels, a lot of creatures start developing condition immunities and legendary resistances, resulting in control builds losing power at higher and higher levels, usually resulting in them dipping into damage. So usually most control builds you'll face are some type of damage control hybrid. The best control spells are ones that don't have saving throws attached to them. Maze, Force Cage is 2 examples. Control builds, their bread and butter is they control the pace of the fight. If they're outnumbered, they'll wall of force themselves against one enemy, and meaning that they'll only have to take them on one at a time. If there's one big enemy that's got a lot of legendary actions, they'll try and cast Hold Monster to paralyze them. How you deal with control builds, D&D does it in a really annoying way, and that's legendary resistances. I think legendary resistances are terrible design and are a symptom of a badly designed high-level gameplay. But that is how you deal with them. Give them legendary resistances and the control build is useless, or at least to a point useless, which means they'll just end up doing damage, which means you treat control builds the same way you treat damage builds. At the end of the day, everything just eventually becomes damage because damage is the most important thing. So in my opinion, this is the bad ending. So how do we avoid the bad ending where everyone just ends up being a damage build? Well, how you do this, first of all, don't give things condition immunities. Giving things immunity to paralysis and charm and stuff, that's all well and fine, but at the end of the day, what it means is just you're conditioning your players to only ever go all in on damage. And that is not what you, as the dungeon master, want. You'll get bored very quickly. So if you want to continue to have dynamic and interesting fights, the answer is minions. The big monster, don't give it legendary resistances. The way how you deal with the big monster is damage. How do you deal with the little guys? The guys that are fucking you up. The guys that are casting debuff spells. The guys that are giving you little sticks with the spears, dealing small amounts of damage, small amounts of chip damage that add up over time. Those guys, don't give them any condition immunities or legendary resistances. Make those guys the targets for your control casters. That way the control build still gets to interact in the fight, and they don't just become a damage build that you have to deal with the same way as everybody else. The reason why this is different than the tank problem that you just ignore is that tanks can only do one thing or go into damage, and because the one thing they can do is incredibly useless at almost all levels, they basically can only do damage. Control builds are nigh broken at low levels, and as you get to higher levels, legendary resistances are implemented in order to keep up with their strength. Minions are a byproduct of this. Minions are a way that you keep control builds doing control shit so they don't just jump into damage. Give them minions to focus on so that they have to cordon them off with walls of force. So if they have to hold the monster on one of the larger but still threatening minions, make it so that they have to force cage the big bad guy so they can deal with the minions first. These are ways how you deal with control builds. The problem with control builds is that they can always become a damage build at any time. So you need to actually keep them controlling things because you don't want them to go into damage. You don't want a control build doing damage because control builds are also very good at doing damage. All you need is 2 spells, Spirit Shroud, Scorching Ray, and you are a damage threat out the fucking ass. So you want them controlling the battlefield so that they don't become a damage build. Keep them placated. Do not wake the sleeping dog. And if you have a lot of minions and no one's doing control, those minions can become very, very threatening very quickly. All of a sudden, the battlefield is completely dominated by the enemy. They're chucking spears that maybe pierce and restrain the opponents. They themselves are casting counter spells and nobody can get anything going because nobody's dealing with them. That is why they are so important to have. That is why I always suggest having a control caster and always suggest throwing minions at them. But now that is all well said and done, and I told you guys I was going to tell you the build that got me banned. Well, the build that got banned from a table. And that is right, it was not a damage build or a control build, but Chapter 4. Support. Support is, in my opinion, the strongest type of build because they interact with the mechanics in a very direct way. If you're playing like a fighting game, a damage build is Zangief. He just does big fucking damage. A control build is just a zoner. They just stand at the back of the field throwing Hadoukens at you until you die. A support build is hacking. Somebody who just hacks in the game. Support builds typically will interact with saving throw mechanics and armor classes and things like that very directly. They'll fuck with character sheets. and that's what makes them incredibly powerful. Support builds can offer bardic inspiration to their allies. Typically, I'm going to talk a lot about bards. I'm going to talk a lot about the Eloquence Bard very specifically because the Eloquence Bard is the guy. It's the culprit. That's the hacker, okay? It's him. That guy. Eloquence Bards are very dangerous because they can both buff and debuff at the same time. They can buff an ally with bardic inspiration, and next turn they can debuff somebody with unsettling words, subtracting a roll of that dice from their next saving throw. And those dice are hefty. At level 5, that's a D8, meaning on average, they are subtracting 5 from your next saving throw. No spell exists that debuffs you this much at this level. There was no other spell other than Bestow Curse, and that requires a save. There is no save attached to Unsettling Words from the Eloquence Bard. It just happens. It is brutally strong. Now, a support build of standard one is just going full bard. Full bard is a solid class at all levels. Why? They get access to Wish, and they get access to 9th level spells, and they get access to full spell lists. The bard spell list post level 10 is fucking ridiculous because of their access to their magical secrets that they get to steal from other classes. It is incredibly powerful at high level. As the bard becomes more and more powerful, the Eloquence Bard is equally powerful. Getting to level 20, which is what we're fucking talking about, using Wish to clone yourself, so you have a simulacrum of yourself that you can then use 2 Unsettling Words, which are D12s, which mean -7 on average the next save. That's fucking brutal. You put that on one enemy, you have your sim put it on another enemy, and then you hit them both with something bullshit like slow. And slow is bullshit. Slow is a bullshit fucking spell, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I know I'm talking a lot about saving throws, and didn't you say Offbeat like literally like 5 minutes ago that you can just beat that with legendary resistances? We're gonna get to that. Slow is a bullshit fucking spell because it does so much, and it's a level 3 spell, and it affects an area. Here's everything it does. 1, it halves your movement speed. It means that you can only take actions or a bonus action on your turn, not both. You can only take one of those. If you have a multi-attack, you can only make one attack per action. No more can you make more than one attack. It's only one. 2, it minuses your AC by 2. That's 10%. 3, it subtracts all your dexterity saving throws by 2. That's a lot. Next, you can't take reactions. This is bad.
Chrissy, wake up! I don't like this!
This is so bad at high level because you know what that means that you can't do? Counterspell. You can no longer counterspell, and that is bad. If you cannot counterspell, you are not keeping pace with the game. So support builds have access to a spell that completely ruins the action economy of high level play. Slow is a must legendary resist, and let's talk about this for a moment. You might say, oh, it's only available to sorcerers and wizards. No, it's available to bards through the expanded spell list thanks to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So let's talk about this for a moment. Additionally, if they attempt to cast a spell with a casting type of 1 action, you have to roll a d20. On an 11 or higher, the spell doesn't take effect until its next turn. And it's got to use its action on its next turn to make it. And if it can't do that, the spell is wasted. It can make a wisdom save at the end of its turn in order to get through this, but remember, an Eloquence Bard is going to be keeping up with that shit, debuffing you. And if you've got 2 of them, 1 debuffs, hits you with the slow, the second one hits you with its next Unsettling Words, so you've got a -7 to your next save on that shit. And so you might think the counterplay is to just legendary resist, but at high level, remember, high level spellcasters have simulacrums. That's bad. That means that on average, the support build can chew through 2 legendary resistances a turn. If there's even 1 more spellcaster, that's 4 legendary resistances a turn. That is insanely bad. Your legendary resistances are no longer the bulwark that they once were, because a support build can chew through those like nothing. That is the danger of support builds. Additionally, the most threatening build I've made with a support build, it's a very simple multi-class. It's 18 levels in Bard, 2 levels in Wizard. Divination Wizard. And this build was banned from the table at 14th level. So I was only a 12th level Bard at this point. I didn't have access to Simulacrum, but it was so threatening that me and my DM, we had to sit down chat about it. And we talked a lot about how to actually deal with this support build and how much pressure it's able to do. Because on one hand, one way you deal with it is you just make all your creatures immune to its spells. There's precedent for this with the helmed horrors being immune to spells of your choice, but remember, D&D isn't just about winning, it's about making engaging combat and about making engaging, entertaining stories. And in my talks with my DM is Sir Pfeffers, by the way. Go check out the Jake and Pfeffers YouTube channel. You can watch that campaign. It's currently ongoing at twitch.tv/SirPfeffers_. It's live every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. But that build did one thing too good. It controlled the dice very, very well, which meant that the only way to deal with all of these effects that I was basically guaranteed to put on it was to either give everything so many legendary resistances that I wasn't able to engage in the fight, or to give it condition immunity so much that nobody could apply any effects, which hard countered the control caster in our group, which meant everyone just ended up having to do damage, which meant that my build ended up breaking the game so much that everybody's play had to center around me. And why was it so effective with this divination wizard? Well, here it is. A divination wizard has on average a 75% chance every day to roll below 10. I don't want to roll high on my portents. I want to roll low. Portents allow me to, without even spending a resource or a reaction, change the roll of the dice to what I rolled earlier in the day. And if I have a 75% chance of rolling low, that means that on a given day, if I'm subtracting, at the time I had D10s, if I'm subtracting on average a 6 from every roll, if I roll even a 10, that means that I can actually force a 4. Actually forcing a 4 on an opponent without even spending a reaction on their next saving throw roll. That is a guarantee. That is not a chance of success. That is a guaranteed success on that saving throw spell, whatever it may be, and usually it was slow. It was 90% of the time it was slow or hypnotic pattern. And the fact that I could guarantee it so much, that the surefire nature of the strategy, we also had another divination wizard in the party, so it was just guaranteed saving throws, spells, all the time. And so we eventually diagnosed the problem, and it was my build. It made it so that if Sir Pfeffers didn't make the creatures immune to our spells, basically knocking me and the wizard out of the fight, we would just steamroll it. It became so swingy. And obviously, you could have just killed the character, which I know you guys are gonna say, that's fucking boring and you're lame for it. So me and my DM came up with another build that still kept the identity of the character, which was a smooth talker, but changed them to be more of a damage-centric support slight focus, which I still am an eloquence bard. I'm still debuffing, but I don't have divination wizard anymore, so I can no longer guarantee the thing, and I'm also not as high level spellcaster anymore. The point of this is all saying is that support builds are incredibly strong. Most builds won't be as strong as the one I just mentioned. A support build is dealt with in similar fashion to control builds. Give them more things to focus on and waste their abilities upon. But if they are as strong as the one I mentioned, a support build is one build that I give a Offbeat Outlaw certification of. It's fair to ask your player to change. Come at it humbly. My DM didn't say I'm being a bitch and an asshole, or I'm being a dickhead and I need to die. They went, hey, Offbeat, I don't know how to deal with this. We first had a conversation on how we might deal with it, how we might balance it. And even I went, to be honest, I don't know how to do this without making it so unfun for everybody else. So we changed it, and that is how I got one build banned from a table. But that is all for today, so thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. God hope you fucking learned something. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps the channel so much. It helps get the video out there. And if you really liked it, go support me on Patreon. It is $3 a month. It helps me keep the channel going. It helps me, eat food and things like that, valuable things, and also pay my editors in not just cockroaches that they find in the editing bay. You know what I mean? Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, go fuck yourself. And also, get the fuck out of my house.